All right, what's up? What's up? What's up? So I'm back at it with Zachariah Sitchin's book. Today, let's go ahead and add this to the stage. I'm going to be talking about When Time Began, the fifth book of the Earth Chronicles from Zachariah Sitchin. Of course, I got the book on hand. Like always, I got tabs on it. So everything I'm going to talk about comes from the tabs that I've marked in this book, which is pretty interesting. But before I start on my tabs, I do want to say this. I have some key points that I do want to talk about. It's not nothing serious, but he talks about poster 182910, which I'll get into on here, human origins. um every Zachariah Sitchin book that I've read literally comes into play where humans came from, and where the Anunnaki came from, and so on and so forth. One of the things that caught my interest is a lot of the Sumerian astronomy, and the how many planets are out there, and how many planets the Sumerians known, and so on and so forth. And I can tell you, the Sumerians themselves only knew five celestial bodies, no more than that. It wasn't until later on when it became the Akkadians, Assyrians, and so on and so forth, where you get more celestial objects and stuff like that. But for the most part, the Sumerian, let me just put it like this: a lot of people take what the Mesopotamians as a whole, which is basically the Sumerians and Akkadians and so on and so forth. They take what they said as a whole and say that the Sumerians said it, and they only say that. And I can only guess that they say that because a lot of times when I ask these individuals, like Billy Carson and so on and so forth, these individuals say that because the Sumerians are considered the first civilization because of their writing system. Now, I can tell you from the academic world, I took a class from Nili Samet. I have said this plenty of times, from Bar Ilan University, that the Sumerians are considered the first civilization because of their writing system. Well, their writing system didn't start off advanced. It was just basically pictographs. I've talked about that so many times in the past, about how pictographic script was basically what we see as emojis and hieroglyphs and so on and so forth. But the Sumerians aren't the only or the first people to have a system like that. When I say pictographic script or so on and so forth, I mean, you can find that all over the world. But for some reason, a lot of people believe that, and that's fine and that's okay. But When Time Began, the fifth book of the Earth Chronicles by Zachariah Sitchin, it's mixed with a lot of academic and scientific information, but then he takes that academic and scientific information and he translates it into his trying to create a narrative of about who the Anunnaki were and why they did what they did and so on and so forth. So he basically says that, okay, like the Mesoamericans and the Mesopotamians had a lot in common because they had a similar story about certain gods. I can tell you right now, every civilization around the world had a god that was a water god, or a fish god, or a turtle god, or a falcon god, or a hawk god. It doesn't matter. Every civilization, depending on where they were and the type of animals they had, these animals represented their gods in many ways. And a lot of people will also say, and I've heard people say this, that like Thoth, Ningazita, and Kokokan or Quetzalcoatl, they were all the same because they had their own, they developed, a calendar or a writing system and so on and so forth. You're going to find that all over the world. And one of the things that I want to tell everybody is when it comes to a calendar, you can find calendars from all around the world. You got Gobekli Tepe, where some people would say that's a calendar. Some people would say Nafta Playa was a calendar. Then you got the Inky/Adams calendar in South Africa. It's just a calendar is basically something that tells time, something like a sundial, even. It just tells time, and it annotates what happened in the skies and the stars and so on and so forth. I've said this before. One of the hardest books that I've ever read in my life was called Almagest, Almagest, I believe, from Ptolemy. And there's nothing but a mathematical equations about how they basically recorded how the sun, moon, and stars and everything moved. Um, it's not it's not hard to look up in the sky and determine how things happen. I give you an example. When I moved into my house, I wanted to change out my grass in the front yard from St. Augustine to Bermuda grass. And when I first started, of course, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just going off a whim. I did some research and stuff like that, but you can do as much research as you want, and you won't get it right unless you calculate the timing of it. And calculating the timing of it was I had to pay attention to my surroundings. So about, of course, the first 2 or 3 years, my front yard would grow grass and then it would die. And of course, I didn't, feed it nutrients and kill the bugs like I was supposed to. I didn't really know how to do that stuff because the timing was kind of off. But what I learned is that I had to plant the grass seed at a certain time when the humidity was right, when the sun was out right, when the heat was perfect, and so on and so forth. There's so many things that played into how that grass grown. And after about 4 years, my grass started staying, and I realized, the tree that I have in my front yard, the leaves will start growing when it's close to springtime, and then when winter would hit, of course, the leaves will fall off. That was my indication when I needed to start planting my grass seeds. When the tree started growing at a certain time, that's when I needed to plant the grass seeds. And when I needed to stop, basically monitoring the grass, and when I had to cut it a certain length for it to be a certain height, and so on and so forth, was when the leaves started falling off. And so it just everything just played a part. And I had to look at the sky, I had to look at the moon, I had the constellations, I had to pay attention to a lot of stuff. And I can tell you that when you have no TV, no computers, no nothing, just you and nature, you become one with nature. So, of course, people who were doing agricultural needs in Mesoamerica were probably having the same type of guys that were doing agriculture in Mesopotamia, right? Different times when certain things were supposed to grow. I'll give you another example. I've heard people talk about the Pleiades system, the Seven Sisters, and so on and so forth, and that these individuals, there's extraterrestrials that come from Pleiades. And to me, I don't know where these people get some of this information from. I think they just like being ignorant, because when you actually read the ancient texts from Mesoamerica to Mesopotamia and all that, when they talked about Pleiades, that was when they needed to do agriculture needs. That sometimes in certain parts of the world, that's when their rainy season was. It literally is. The Popol Vuh talks about the Pleiades system. The Taino tribe talks about the Pleiades system. You also even have Mesopotamia that talks about Pleiades system, and they talk about it when they seen it at a sky at a certain point. That's when they had to do certain things to their agriculture. So when I read Zachariah Sitchin's book, or when I read people say, how do all these people have similarities around the world? Well, it's easy. It's simple. They had stories to tell so people could pay attention to their surroundings when they needed agricultural needs. It's just basic knowledge. And but a lot of people like to take this stuff and say, well, they're talking about extraterrestrials. They're talking about this. No, they're not. Maybe later on in life, when people got bored of the stories because it's agricultural needs and it was easy to start doing it and this, that, and the third, maybe they flip the stories and stuff like that. I mean, you can pretty much tell when they flip the stories. In the future, I'm definitely going to go over the book Almagest. I'm going to go over the Popol Vuh and all these other books to show you that what I'm talking about. But with this book right here, with Zachariah Sitchin's book, like I said, he uses a lot of academic and scientific information to create a new narrative, not the narrative that was already created before him. He's creating a new narrative, and this new narrative is so hyped up to the point where he wants to make it entertaining. And that's basically what a myth in these traditional oral stories was to keep it entertaining, but pass along good information for the survival of humans. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with the first tab that I have right here. Before I start that, I gotta tell you, look, check this out. Visit Lil Vibe on Spotify. Listen to his music. His music is wonderful. I will always support him and his music. I listen to his music every day, especially when I'm doing laundry. Really very, very good music. So so when I bought this book, my son he kind of wrote in it in the beginning when he was a little kid. So it's memories for me. But I'm gonna read what the praise for the works of Zachariah Sitchin from certain people says, and this is just basically opening up the book and then seeing something like this. Like when you open up the book, you'll see this praise for Zachariah Sitchin. So this is what it says. It says, and this is what's really crazy because this blows my mind, and this is why I say a lot of times that um, people will in many ways shoot, I didn't mean to do that. Many people will in many ways make it seem like Zachariah Sitchin was the man when it came to this stuff, but this is what it says, and I quote, reflects the highest level of scientific knowledge, science and religion news. That's where it came from. It does not reflect the highest level of scientific knowledge. It just doesn't. And I'm going to show you why. And I'm going to go over the tabs. Of course, you can see in there, I got tabs shown on there. It says exciting, most provocative, compelling library journal. One of the most important books on Earth roots ever written, East West Journal. Now, I'm going to tell you how fucked up that really is. And I say that with sincerity and passion. Okay. Most people know who Zachariah Sitchin is, but don't know who Samuel Noah Kramer is, let alone Andrew George Smith. And these are the same people that Andrew George Smith, and Samuel Noah Kramer, these are the individuals that could actually read cuneiform and have proven it on so many occasions when they were alive. Zachariah Sitchin, on the other hand, he never proved what he said. And I'm going to tell you how I know this, because when Dr. Michael S. Heiser asked him to prove what he said about planet Nibiru, Zachariah Sitchin never did it. Same thing that Billy Carson tells you today. I met him at Cosmic Summit. I asked him a few questions. He told me to go read these books and read that. Well, you telling a man that already did that stuff. So telling me, and I'm asking you, you just deflecting from what you know. And I'm telling you, as I sit right here in front of this computer and go live with you, same thing as Billy Carson can do right now. He can pick up all these cuneiform tablets that he says that he's the only fourth person in the world that can do this, that, and third. It was show people. Stop talking about it and show people. Teach people so they can learn from themselves. But that's the problem. He doesn't do it. I'm going to do that when I get to comfortable to the point where I understand the language for myself. I am teaching myself the cuneiform writing system myself. I have plenty of books on it, and it's a slow process. It's not something that I don't even think you can do this in a lifetime unless you actually go to a school and you hound on it every single day. Nobody that travels and watches TV or goes to work will have enough time to do this. This is what you have to solely do all the time. Literally, you can't do anything else because it's a really long process. And anybody that says that they can, they're fooling themselves. You can't teach yourself cuneiform without teaching yourself the other languages after that. And the reason why is because you have to basically step. It's a stepping stone, basically. But I'm gonna go ahead and continue. One of the most important, the other thing is Sitchin is a zealous investigator into man's origins, a dazzling performance. Kirkus reviews, I like that one, right? For thousands of years, priests, poets, and scientists have tried to explain how man was created. Now, a recognized scholar has come forth with a theory that is most astonishing at all. Look, he got this information from other people. Matter of fact, I can tell you right now, go to the Electronic Text Corpus of Sumerian Literature, ETCSL, and you can see how they've been talking about this before Zachariah Sitchin even got his hands on it. Samuel Noah Kramer has been saying this same stuff. And I'm talking about accuracy, though, with proving what he got this information from and giving you the cuneiform tablet identifiers and so on and so forth, and showed everybody, hey, this is what it says. So no, Zachariah Sitchin is not the first. And that's what bothers me the most, is that so many people give credit to Zachariah Sitchin when this information was already out there. Now he takes the information that's out there and takes it and creates a whole new narrative, which is wrong. Okay. The first tab that I said is basically page 3, and it's on chapter 1, the cycles of time. This is what he says. The first discovery in July 1991 turned out to have been entirely correct. It was an announcement by a team of British astronomers that, based on observations over a 5-year period, that they concluded that a rapid Rapidly spinning star identified as Pulsar 1829-10 has a planet-sized companion about 10 times the size of Earth. Pulsars are assumed to be extraordinarily dense cores of stars that have collapsed for one reason or another. Spinning madly, they emit pulses of radio energy in regular bursts many times per second. Such pulses can be monitored by radio telescopes by detecting a cyclic fluctuation. The astronomers surmise that a planet that orbits pulsar 1829 once every 6 months can cause an explanation in the fluctuation. Then it goes on to say, as it turned out, the British astronomers admitted several months later that their calculations were imprecise, and therefore they could not stand by their conclusion that pulsar some 30,000 light years away had a planetary satellite. Okay, so he starts off the first paragraph saying, hold on, let me make sure I say the words correctly. Okay, yeah. Turned out not to have been entirely correct. It was an announcement by a team of astronomers that based on observations of a 5-year period. 5-year period, only a 5-year period. The book Almagest from Ptolemy, this is calculations and observations for thousands of years. So one person made an observation and calculation, then the next person who followed up behind it came up with more information, and the information kept getting more and more precise, basically, right? But nobody knows how accurate it is, right? Our constellations, from what I understand, there are billions and billions of planets out there. There are billions and billions and billions of galaxies and so on and so forth, right? But the truth of the matter is nobody knows exactly. These are just calculations, right? These are estimates. These are statistics that people are given based off of mathematical equations. No different than what we do in everyday life. It's based off of mathematical equations. But when it comes out to what he said, 30,000 light years away, that's actually accurate. You can go in there and look at it. Like I said, he takes a lot of the scientific academic information, but he takes it and he's trying to create a narrative to say that the Anunnaki came from planet Nibiru. That's what he's the root idea of his books, the basic foundation of all his books is basically he's trying to prove that the Anunnaki came from planet Nibiru. And I already proved plenty of times that they didn't come from no planet Nibiru, that they came from the depths of seas. And you can definitely look at Enki and tell and look up who and where Enki came from. This is not me saying it. These are just facts. The next tab he says is, the Hindu traditions were brought to the Indian subcontinent by Aryan migrants from the shores of the Caspian Sea, cousins of the Indo-Europeans who were the Hittites of Asia Minor, today's Turkey, and the Hurrians of the upper Euphrates River, through whom Sumerian knowledge and beliefs were transmitted to the Indo-Europeans. Look up the time frame of Indo-Europeans and the Sumerians, and you can tell how misinformed he was on that part. Matter of fact, like I said, the Sumerians might have had the first writing system according to academia because of the writing system, or they were the first civilization because of the writing system. But that doesn't mean that everything came from the Sumerians. There were plenty of people around before the Sumerians that was calculating things from observations of the sky. Like I said, Naphtopleia for one of them is one of them, and that's in Ethiopia, if I'm not mistaken, or close to Ethiopia. It's basically almost like the Stonehenge, basically, right? But you also have Göbekli Tepe that goes back, some people say, anywhere from 12 to 18,000 years ago, and even further because they haven't fully excavated that. So if the Göbekli Tepe is older than the Sumerians, then why are you saying that the observations came from the Sumerians? Why not just say it came from Göbekli Tepe, right? That's just me thinking logically. If the Sumerian civilization started at 3200 BC and Göbekli Tepe goes back much further back than that, then the Sumerians obviously weren't the first that was observing the Earth or the constellations or any of that. Just me being honest. But like I said, everybody says the Sumerians only because of their writing system. The next tab says the fourfold division of the solar year, 2 solstices, 2 equinoxes, was combined in antiquity with the lunar motions to create the first known formal calendar, the lunar solar calendar of Nippur, which is also known, and I'm saying this, he didn't say this, Nippur is also known as Nibiru. It's a Mesopotamian city. It was used by the Akkadians, Babylonians, Assyrians, and other nations after them, and remains in use to this very day as the Jewish calendar. What? Yeah, that's kind of that's actually accurate. But see, this is the problem. Like I said, Napta Playa, Gobekli Tepe, the Adams Inky calendar in South Africa, which some people say that goes back anywhere from 60 to 200,000 years ago. The Sumerians weren't the first ones recording this stuff. They were just the first ones probably put it down in a writing system for people to understand. Not in matter of fact, the Ishango bone, Ishango bone, is literally a calculation of the moon. And guess who has the most intimate relationship with the moon? Women, their menstrual periods, literally. So women were the first mathematicians. They were the first ones having a relationship with the moon. They literally, this is what makes me so irritated about some of these people like Billy Carson who took this information from Zachariah Sitchin and they don't do their due diligence. They talk about a little bit about, I never heard Billy Carson talk about this Shango. He might have. I don't follow him too much anymore because I feel like he's just doing it for money now instead of giving knowledge. I mean, knowledge shouldn't be a monetary gain, right? You can make money off of other ways. You don't have to make money off of trying to make people stupid. And I can tell you a lot of people don't know about this Shango bone. And you can look at that, and women have the most intimate relationship with the moon. They were the first mathematicians. I've said this plenty of times in the past. This is another tab that he says. He says, for mankind, earthly time began in 3760 BC. We know the exact date because in the year 1992 of the Common Era, the Jewish calendar counts the year 5752. For mankind, earthly time began in 3760 BC. Well, guess who was around 3760? It wasn't the Sumerians because the Sumerian civilization didn't start till 3200 BC. So guess who it was? I'll tell you who it was. It was the Ubadians. The Ubadians came before the Sumerians. Matter of fact, the Ubadians was inhabiting the land of Sumer way before the Sumerians did. But that's also the culture and individuals and civilization, depending on what you consider a civilization, what criteria is needed for a civilization. The Ubadians have these sculptures and artifacts of reptilians, but I'm not here to talk about that right now. I get into that with another book. That's a lot of stuff right there. All right, here's another tab. He says the solution was provided by the phenomenon called precession. Because of its wobble, the Earth's orbit around the sun is slightly retarded. That's what he says. He says that in his book each year. The retardation or precision amounts to 1 degree in 72 years. Now, I've heard scientists say, talked about the Earth's axis and all that. So the only reason why I marked that was because I wanted to see how accurate he was in there. And if you read page 24 and you read that from what I've just read, that top of the paragraph all the way to, because it goes into all the way to the end of the chapter, it basically gives you what his understanding is. And he has in his book right here, I'll show you. He has this part right here. This part right here. He has right here where time began. I'm sure you can see it. And he just gives you a little bit of information of, how the cycle of Earth and all this other stuff happens and stuff like that. But nobody knows exactly. So I'm not here to argue that fact. I'm just here to tell you that I found that interesting and I dug into it and I understand more what he was trying to say. And I can tell you from his information, from what he knew at that time to what we have today, it's not 100% accurate, but it's pretty close. The next chapter is a computer made of stone. Okay. So on this one, this has to do with the Aztecs, basically. And the first tab that I had up on here, he says the first age was the age of the white-haired giants. The second, the golden age. Now, I can tell you, when I go over this book in the future, right here, you're going to hear about a Native American group of individuals who were considered giants, literally. a group of individuals, and I'm not finished done with this book yet. It's a really long book. It's very informative, but I definitely will be doing it in the future. But they talk about certain Native Americans in the Americas who were considered giants, and they had the giant bones and so on and so forth. That book is from Oxford University. So when he says white hair giants, I just want to give you a description of that. When people get old, guess what? Their hair starts turning gray. Then some people's hair turn gray even before they get to a certain age. So considering somebody a white hair giant depends on what you consider a giant, first of all, because what is the criteria to be known as a giant? Well, some people will say, well, go read the Bible. Well, I have read the Bible, and guess what? Goliath was six cubits in the span. But guess what? When I go read that Greek Septuagint with the Apocrypha in there, guess what it says? 4 cubits in the span. So he's 2 cubits shorter than what the King James Version says. So the King James Version, when you look at 6 cubits in span, it can go anywhere from 6 to 9 feet, right? 4 cubits can be anything from 5 to 8 feet. So what do you consider a giant? Shaquille O'Neal's a giant, right? So, I mean, come on. Is what you consider and what the criteria is needed to be considered a giant. All right. Let's see. The next tab. He says, Hoyle, on his part, arrived at the conviction that Stonehenge was not a mere observatory, a place to see what goes on in the skies. He called it a predictor, an instrument for foretelling celestial events and facility for noting them on predetermined dates. Now let me read this again, because I want you to understand why I laugh. Hoyle, on his part, arrived at the conviction that Stonehenge was not a mere observatory. What's an observatory? Something that looks at the sky, something that's observing something out there, right? But he says a place to see what goes on in the skies. That's what he's saying as an observatory. He called it a predictor, an instrument for foretelling celestial events and a facility for noting them on the predetermined dates. He's observing. You just basically contradicted yourself all in that one damn sentence, homie. Literally. It's an observatory. A predictor is an observatory. You're predicting something because you're observing something. You're predicting what might happen after that because you're observing something. You're saying, oh, that car is going pretty fast. I'm going to predict that car is going to crash, and that car crashes. Well, you just observed it. Come on, man. You got to do better than that, brother. But he can't because he's not here with us anymore. But I'm here to teach y'all and show y'all that sometimes you got to do deeper knowledge. You got to dig into your stuff. You have to understand what you're reading. You just can't. I've heard so many people, including Billy Carson, I've read thousands of books. I read this many books, blah, blah, blah. But did you comprehend what the hell you just read? I didn't hear you say you comprehended anything. I just heard you read stuff. I mean, there's plenty of times when I've read a book and I'm like, damn, what the hell did I just read? I need to go back and read that whole paragraph again. And I'm pretty sure plenty of other people have felt that. So for somebody to sit there and say, I've read so many books, come on, man. How many times have you read them books? Can I tell you right now, every book that I have in my library, and I have a couple of 100 books in my library, I've read them all at least 3 times. At least, at bare minimum, 3 times. So when I say that I comprehend and understand what I've read, is why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I'm telling you what is right and what is wrong based on my observations, right? And I'm not telling you that what is right and wrong based off of, because I'm right and they're wrong. I'm telling you that when I read what you've read or what you've wrote, and I go do my due diligence and research what you said, and I found out that you just made up a narrative and you exaggerated in what you said, that's how I know you were wrong in the information, like Planet Nibiru. If there's a planet Nibiru that orbits our sun every 3,600 years, then by God, we would know about it, right? We've been observing. There's going to be stuff like that. But this is what's really going to get a lot of people. Even if they find a planet out there with different humans and all this other stuff, they're going to call it, some people will say, see, Zechariah Sitchin was right. It was a planet Nibiru. But did it orbit our sun there for 3,600 years, right? Did they really mine gold? I mean, you're really pushing it. But if you're right, you're right. But my point is if you're right, show me what cuneiform tablet says what you said. And all I need to go is to the Cuneiform Digital Library of Initiative and pull it up and see for myself. Because you can go to the Cuneiform Digital Library of Initiative, CDLI, on Google or any search engine, and you will see that they have all the cuneiform tablets out there. Now, the hard thing is that you just can't go up there and look for it and click on a couple of buttons. You have to actually know how to navigate these websites, just like the Electronic Text Corpus of Sumerian Literature, ETCSL. You just can't go up there and like, oh, I'm click on this and click on this and click on this. No, when you pull up the ETCSL and you type in an Anunnaki in there, you're not going to get anything on the Anunnaki. You type in Anuna, Anuna, you're going to get everything that they talked about the Anuna. How do I know this? Because the Sumerians didn't call them the Anunnaki. That's an Akkadian term. They called them the Anuna. So in the Anunnaki and the Anuna, they have a lot of similarities, but they also have a lot of other things that's different, right? Literally, they do have things that's different. The hierarchy is different. And I give you an example. Some people, Billy Carson has said it plenty of times, Enki and Enlil were known as brothers. That's not always true. Depending on the cuneiform tablets, depending on the text itself, one was the father and one was the son. It's literally in the Electronic Text Corpus of Sumerian Literature. If you don't believe me, go get this stuff. Go read it. The ancient literature of Sumer, all this stuff would tell you this stuff. But the problem is they pick a portion of what they think is right and they run with it, and they don't give you everything. I'm going to give you the whole loaf of bread. I'm not just going to give you a slice. I'm going to give you the whole loaf of bread. I'm going to tell you everything, even the ends where people don't even like. And that's the information that I'm giving to you, is the ends of it, the stuff that goes against the narrative that people have created and made money off of, and really dumped down our society in a lot of ways, because they feel like, okay, and a lot of people aren't going to go behind them and research that. Well, I'm the wrong person to tell to go do some research, because not only have I already done my research, I'm going to redo my research just to say that I can prove to you that what you're saying is a narrative you're creating for your benefit, not for the benefit of humanity and understanding and giving them knowledge, but the benefit to fill up your pockets. And that's what's crazy. The Anu shrine, it is known from Egyptians, ANNU, inscriptions held the Benben, okay, claimed to have been the actual conical upper part of the celestial barge in which the god Ra had come to Earth from the planet of millions of years. Hit and miss with that. I haven't read anything where it says Ra came from a planet of millions of years. I haven't read anything like that. I have the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I have the pyramid text. I have the coffin text. And the coffin text and the pyramid text is basically where you're going to get the bread and butter of all the information. The Egyptian Book of the Dead, that's a good source too. But the problem with that is there's not just one Book of the Dead. Every individual that was buried in Egypt, depending on how wealthy they were, had their own basic obituary. That's basically what it was. This was an obituary telling you about this individual. And then it went into how they can go from from life to the afterlife, like what they needed to do to accomplish that. And that's no different than any other civilization. So everybody had their own version of the Egyptian Book of the Dead. The next tab, it says they celebrated the 13th anniversary of the pharaoh's reign, so the corridor could have been built then. The celebration followed the mysterious rites of the Sed festival, SED. The term's meaning remains unclear, which marks some kind of jubilee and which always began on the first day of the Egyptian calendar, the first day of the month, which was named the month of Thoth. In other words, the Sed festival was a kind of New Year's Day festival celebrated not each year, but after the passage of a number of years. Now, I want you to understand the reason why I tabbed that one up was because this had to do with, let me see. This had to do with a temple. And let me make sure which temple he was talking about. Okay, the Heliopolitan Shrine. That's what he was talking about. And I could just tell you the reason why I marked that up was because of the simple fact that the term's meaning remains unclear, but with some kind of jubilee. That's accurate. Nobody knows really what the New Year's was and New Year's Day and stuff like that. All that information right there was just, to me, a basic saying that, hey, everybody had to celebrate it a different time of year. The Egyptians do have their own calendar. The Ethiopians have their own calendar. Everybody has their own calendar and stuff like that. But it was based on their calendar were based on their agricultural needs when they would grow their certain foods and harvest their certain foods. So they had certain times for it. You don't harvest rice at the same time as harvesting um, what like let's see, maize or something like that, right? It's all different. That's why I brought up earlier the grass seed, St. Augustine and Bermuda. St. Augustine grows way differently than Bermuda. Bermuda is drought resistant, meaning that it can go up to 2 to 3 weeks without being water. It might turn a little brown, but as soon as it gets water, it goes to green. St. Augustine is not as drought resistant as Bermuda grass. So if we depended on, what if we needed to eat grass and we needed to pick over Bermuda and St. Augustine to plant, depending on where you lived, you would do the Bermuda, and then depending on other places, you would do St. Augustine. Now Bermuda has to have full sun, 6 to 8 hours. St. Augustine doesn't need that many hours of sun. It does thrive with more sun, but Bermuda, if there's shade, there will be, it will be very, very, it will be lacking basically. Let's just keep it simple like that. Let's see the next tab. Let's see the next tab. He said, "Oh man, there we go." Okay, he talks about the table of obliquity, fine-tuned and made more accurate during the past century, shows the change in the angle of the Earth's tilt in 500-year intervals, going back from the present 23 degrees, 27, about 23.5 degrees. And this is where he gives his sources for that right here. That you see where it says lock years, the table of liquidity and all that. Yeah, that tablet, that right there, 500 BC, 1000 BC, 1500 BC, and all that. It tells you the degrees it was around that time frame. Anybody that's looking at this, you can go in there and see how accurate this is for yourself and get the information. But for the most part, this was very interesting to learn. The next tab, where the sun, and this is a question he asked, were the sun temples of Egypt then the prototypes for Stonehenge? Come on, let me just say this real quick. Like I said, everywhere you go around the world, you don't necessarily have to have knowledge from a different culture to see how the constellations were. The Egyptians, the Mesopotamians, and the Mesoamericans, they all individually looked at the sky in different ways for their own agricultural needs. So when he asked that question, were the sun temples of Egypt then the prototypes for Stonehenge? Come on, man. You don't have to ask a question like that. Nobody has to. There was no one on this earth or culture or a civilization on this earth that wasn't looking at the skies. Even today, people still look at the skies. I go fishing. I look at the moon and the position and the stars and all this other stuff just to go fishing. There are times when I've been told from old school people, and I live in the South, that you don't want to go fishing at certain times. You don't want to go midday when the sun is at its highest, because the fish won't bite that much. You want to go right when the sun is just about to come up, so you can get up, set up, get to your spot. And when the sun is coming, right over the horizon or doing whatever is, peeking over the trees or whatever the case may be, that's the best time to fish. That's when you only get your most bites. And I can tell you from my personal experience fishing for the last 30 years of my life, I can tell you I caught all my fish mostly around anywhere from 7 a.m. or I'm gonna say 6 a.m., 6:30 a.m. to about 10:30 a.m. And then after about 11, it started slowing down drastically. And this is bass fishing for sport. This is crappie fishing. This is brim fishing. This is what are some other ones that whiting fishing when I go out there to the ocean. And I took a picture of a boat that I have. I have a big old 17-foot boat, bass boat, right next to my house right now on the side of my house that I have. And big ass motor and everything. And I can tell you, when you spend money on stuff like that, you better know what what you're doing. That's a tool, basically, right? Because not everybody, when you go fishing, you can't. Some of the best locations are in hard to reach places, and I can tell you, having a big boat like mine, is I can't get to it. So guess what? I got in my backyard against my fence. I got a kayak. So I know what I'm talking about when it comes to my own personal experience. I've been doing this for the last 30 years fishing. Okay, I've been bank fishing, I've been kayaking fishing, and I have my own boat. So I know a little bit what I'm talking about. My matter of fact, my personal best is a 10-pound bass. And anybody that knows about bass fishing for sporting, that's everybody's goal, is to get at least a 10-pound bass. But you know, it's all on what you experience for yourself. I'm like that boots on ground type of person. I like to experience stuff for myself. All right, here's another tab. He says, what about those famous seafarers, the Phoenicians? Not only did they reach the British Isles mainly in search of tin, too late to have built not just Stonehenge, one, but also the second and third phases, but none of their temple architecture bears any resemblance to the empathetically circular essence of Stonehenge. We can see a Phoenician temple depicted on the Byblos coin, and it is certainly rectangular. On the vast stone platform at Baalbek in the Lebanon mountains, people after people and conquerors after conquerors built their temples precisely on the ruins and according to the layout of preceding temples. Now, that's true. Every temple, every religious site, every sacred site, observatory site, they were built on top of each other. Nobody knows exactly why, but it happens. Everybody has their own theories and ideas and so on and so forth. But yeah, nobody knows exactly why they did it. But yeah, that's actually accurate. I've looked into that. But I could tell you, if you want to know about if you want to know about Stonehenge, you want to know about the Celtic Druids and so on and so forth, I recommend you going to some of my earlier videos, Anacalypsis Volume 1 and Volume 2, and Celtic Druids by Godfrey Higgins. I did those already. Same thing what I've read from reading those books. I did a whole video on those, and I went over Godfrey Higgins' books, and I can tell you he gets in really great detail about the Celtic Druids and Stonehenge and all these other places. Also, I also want to remind everybody that when it comes to Stonehenge, Stonehenge was rebuilt. It wasn't something that's been standing like it's been standing the whole time. There was a time when these rocks got taken down. Some people took these stones and so on and so forth, and they had to rebuild it based on what they thought it was. Okay, so right now, nobody can say 100% that's how the Stonehenge was. Nobody can say. Nobody can even say that it was even actually completed, because there's no picture, there's no reference of it. There's none of that. There's only an idea. And I'm telling you this because they have rebuilt it, put it basically back together, basically putting a Lego on the ground and it scatters everywhere and the pieces go everywhere. And they took it and made it to what they thought it looked like. Next tab. This is page 4. He says, Der Enki, the bond heaven and earth. From the earliest days, man has lifted his eyes to the heavens for divine guidance, for inspiration, for help in troubled times. From the very beginning, even as earth was separated from heaven, when it was created, heaven and earth continued to meet everlasting on the horizon. It was there as a man gazed into the distance at sunrise or sunset that he could see the heavenly host. So when human beings, Homo sapiens, Homo sapiens, Homo erectus, Neanderthals, and whoever you want to call these individuals, they were all observing the sky. It was their television, it was their cable, it was their movies. So obviously, everybody had their own calculations. It wasn't until everybody took their calculations and somebody said, hey, I have all the puzzle pieces. So guess what they started doing? They started sharing their knowledge. And the person that did that eventually at one time took all that information and put it into a writing system for people to understand. And that's where you get the Almagest from. I'm telling you, anybody that wants to know about these constellations, Three-Eye Atlas, and all this other crap that's been going on. I mean, everybody's jumping on this bandwagon about Atlas and all that stuff. Go read Almagest. There's going to be plenty more of those. Plenty. And if you are good at math, you can predict the next one. You definitely can. I'm not good at math. That's why I said that book was the hardest book for me to read. That was really one of the hardest books for me to read because it was all mathematics. But if you go pick up that book, Almagest, from Ptolemy, you will see for yourself that there's going to be plenty of atlases coming and going. Okay. I don't even have comments, everything. I don't care what you want to call it. There's plenty of them. Right. And I would go over that book in the future, but like I said, don't take my word for it. I read these books. I do what I've learned from reading this book series on my YouTube channel. And I have a whole bunch of them, 50 something episodes already. I have hundreds of books already, and I'm going to try to go over them as much. Like I said before on my last episode, and I'm more focused now on my stuff and my brand more than anything else. And I'm not promoting or trying to waste my time, be in a group or anything like that. I have information that's good. I've been told I talk a lot. Well, guess what? It's because I know a lot. Don't talk, just be talking. If you want some knowledge, you're going to listen. It doesn't matter who it's coming from. You find somebody that does it better than me. Show me so that way I can do it. But until then, I'm going to continue to do these series because I'm taking the book that I've read personally with these tabs, okay, and telling you what I've done from my research. How many people have these tabs? There ain't but so many people. I keep a stack of them. I got to order some more because I'm down to 3. I buy these from Amazon. They come into 1,500 packs. Okay. And I put them in my books of things that I found interesting. And then I go in it. That's why whenever somebody talks about somebody or something like that, when I used to go to these spaces and listen to people talk about what they knew, and they say, "Oh, Zachariah says this in his book." Oh, he did. Let me go grab this book real quick from my library. Oh, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. It said, what in the Egyptian Book of the Dead? Can you tell me where? No, I don't know exactly where. Okay, no problem. Too easy. I got tabs, and I go in there and look for it. I listen. Then I process, and then I go back and tell you, hey, look, you said this wrong, man. And that's it. That's all I do. Shadow clocks. Also developed into sundials when the upright pole was provided with semicircular base on which an angular scale was marked. Archaeologists have found such instruments at Egyptian sites, but the oldest device so far discovered comes from the Canaanite city of Gezer in Israel. It has a regular angular scale on its face and a scene of the worship of the Egyptian god Thoth on the reverse side. This in this figure 62F. So 62F. That right there. Oops, shoot, my bad, y'all. That right there. Dang it. 62F. Right there. He says that's Thoth. That's what he says. Can you see Thoth, everybody? What was Ibis? What he was? Ibis, and what was the other one? A baboon or something like that? I can't remember. But the Canaanites, and so it's strange with this. So linguistically, when it comes to these languages, Canaanites, Egyptians, Sumerians, and so on and so forth, it's very hit and miss on what these pictographs actually mean. They could look similar, but that doesn't mean that they are one and the same. I'll give you a good example of that. If I draw the sun here, somebody across the world can draw the same exact sun. That doesn't mean we have any relationship at all, right? Animals, you got monkeys and all this other stuff. It's not wherever you are, that's what you're going to depict. So if you see a cougar here and a panther over there, yeah, they might look the same to the untrained eye, but they're not the same. Let's see. Now that it is certain that the biblical tales of the deluge and the Nephilim, the biblical Anunnaki, that's what he says. He says the Nephilim are the Anunnaki. Now, when I go over that book, the Anunnaki Chronicles by his niece, Janet Sitchin, I believe that's her name, the unpublished books by Zachariah Sitchin. He has 3 different versions of who the Anunnaki and the Nephilim are and why they and what the meaning was. And one of those meanings that some people know is those who came from heaven to earth. But that's not what Anunnaki means. It means like princely offspring. Doesn't mean those came from heaven to earth. And I could tell you he was wrong and he made up a lot of shit about that because guess what? He gave his unpublished books that his niece did, which she did him a lot of bad work on. She should never publish those books because that contradicted a lot of shit that he said. I can tell you right now, when I go over that book, and this is the 5th book, I'm gonna be going through these. I'll probably be doing all of Zachariah's. I'll be done with Zachariah Sitchin's book by probably next week because I'm like I said, I'm gonna be pumping out my material like it ain't nothing now. Lil Vibe, yep, the ibis has though supposedly because it was a bird animal that was seen on the water at sunrise. First light in the beginning was the word. Yeah, exactly. Perfectly said, bro. That's literally what it was. And that's the thing, is that and correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't he like a baboon also, Lil Vibe? I can't remember what other animal he was depicted as by Hart. I know it was another type. It wasn't just that one. But correct me if I'm wrong on that, please. I know you're gonna do it because you're always good with hitting me up with good information. Here's another tab. As we continue to examine these specialties and assignments, we will find that a close relationship of temple astronomy calendar was also expressed in the fact that several deities in Sumer, as in Egypt, combined these specialties in their attributes. And since the ziggurats and temples served as observatories to determine the passage of both earthly and celestial times, the deities with the astronomical knowledge were also the ones with the knowledge of orienting and designing temples and their layouts. Yeah, I mean, like I said, you don't have to have a temple to observe anything. People literally put rocks in the ground and to do that. So yeah, I guess I was right about the other animal that Thoth was, but you don't, like I said, you don't have to have a big old temple to represent an observatory. You don't have to have a Gobekli Tepe, and you don't have to have a Stonehenge. You can look at Nafta, for instance. You can look at the Inky / Adams calendar in South Africa. So let's go to the next tab. The notion that the calendar was devised by and for farmers so that they would know when to sow and when to reap has been taken for granted too long. It fails the test of logic. In fact, farmers do not need a formal calendar to know the seasons, and primitive societies have managed to feed themselves for generations without a calendar. That's not true. That is not true. They always had some type of calendar. They didn't necessarily put it in the ground or write it, but they had some kind of indication of a calendar. You can have a calendar memory in your head. But it's that he says that the notion that the calendar was devised by and for farmers so they would know when to sow and when to reap has been taken for granted too long. No, it hasn't been taken for granted. Farmers to this day still does that. Anybody heard of the Weather Channel? I mean, I'm pretty sure you have. You think people just look at it to see when it's going to rain and be sunny outside? Nah. Go out there and have some animals, have a farm. And you tell me that you're going to use that Weather Channel for more than just looking at that. See, the basic society of our needs right now is so easily taken for granted because we have technology that takes all the hard work away from us. We have alarms, okay? People can schedule an alarm a year from now and saying, hey, do this on this date, right? This is no different than what they did in the primitive time when they used rock, stones, and different pictographs to determine things. You can etch something on the side of a tree, for instance, saying, hey, when the sun hits at the certain point on this tree, when this tree that's marked right now, if the sun hits this tree at a certain point, this is what we need to do. Okay, that's a calendar. Sundials. I mean, we've had sundials plenty of times. I mean, how do you think a sundial really actually started? Just look that up and you'll be astonished and surprised on how sundials and stuff like that started. So, and this is chapter 8 where he talks about calendar tales. Let me tell you something. Like I said, here, let me read this real quick. That the calendar's purpose was to enable religious observances should not surprise one at all. We find an instance that still regulates our lives in current common, but actually Christian calendar, its principal festival and calendar is Easter, the celebration of the resurrection according to the New Testament of Jesus on the third day after his crucifixion. Let me tell you something. Go look up the first alphabet on ancient Hebrew and their writing system. You're going to come across what is called Aleph, Aleph, pictographically depicted as a bull or an ox with horns. Okay. What is the horns? What is the bull? What is the ox? What is the cow? What is all that? Well, I'll tell you what that is. That is a god. Why? Because it was a strong leader. It was agricultural needs. Literally, what he said right here was contradicting to himself too. When we started doing agricultural needs, we depicted things to help represent what we trying to pass on to generations after us. Yet oral traditional stories and all this stuff helped, but guess what? Not everybody can hear you. Okay, not everybody can hear. Not everybody can see. And that's why we have Braille today, where people can put their hands on things and read a whole book without even having to use their eyes. They use their hands. Okay. The thing is that everybody seems to think that, okay, everybody had the luxury of seeing here, had the five senses. Not everybody had the five senses. Some people were born blind, but only could hear. So traditional oral stories would be easier for them to remember. Some people couldn't hear, but only could see. So when you're telling somebody who can't hear that they need to plant grass seeds at this time frame, it ain't gonna get to them. So what is your best option after that? Well, guess what you do after that? Well, you put it in where they can see it, where they can understand it. You help them translate it. Okay, this is the type of stuff that I try to tell people, is that just because you have the luxury and privilege to do something doesn't mean everybody else does. Okay, and for our survival, for everybody, you have to adapt everybody into a way to survive. And through agricultural needs, somebody that can't hear and being told when to, plant seeds and so on and so forth, they can look at a picture and say, okay, if the sun is out this point at this time, at this location, then that's your best time to go plant some seeds. And you got to think outside the box. And I don't think a lot of people do that. I think people think inside the box that they're in. Okay, I'm stuck in a box and this is what I know. And some people would be happy with being stuck in the box. But then when you lift the lid up and you go out of it, you see a whole different world. So let's just put that in there. It was only when the Roman Empire Constantine, having adopted Christianity, convened church council, the Council of Nicaea, in the year 325, that the continued dependence on the Jewish calendar was severed, and Christianity, until then deemed by the Gentiles as merely another Jewish sect, was made into a separate religion. Council of Nicaea messed up a lot of stuff. I'm not here to talk about that. I can go into a lot of stuff, but because of the calendar change, you can definitely tell about this. I think I actually marked it. Yep, here we go. This is where this is the next tab, because I was just about to talk about it, but I'll just read it. The current Common Era Christian calendar was introduced by Pope Gregory XIII in 1582, and is therefore called, the Gregorian calendar. It constituted a form of the previous Julian calendar, so named after the Roman Emperor Julius Caesar. The noted Roman emperor, tired of the chaotic Roman calendar, invited in the 1st century BC the astronomer Sosigenes of Alexandria, Egypt, to suggest a reform of the calendar. Sosigenes, however you want to say it, advice was to forget about lunar time keeping and to adopt a solar calendar as that of the Egyptians. The result was a year of 365 days plus a leap year of 366 days once in 4 years, but that still failed to account for the extra 11 and 1/4 minutes a year in excess of the quarter day and above the 365 days. That seemed too minute to bother with it. But the result was that by 1582, the first day of spring fixed by the Council of Nicaea, to fall on the March 21st was retarded by 10 days to March 11th. Pope Gregory corrected the shortfall by simply decreeing on October 4th, 1582, that the next day should be October 15th. So he just messed up a whole bunch of stuff. Because listen, we went from October 4th to October 15th. So if I was born in 1582, I'd have missed out on my birthday because of that fool, because he wanted to change the whole dates. This reform established the currently used Gregorian calendar, whose other innovation was to decree that the year began on January 1st. Anybody's messing with it, we mess with the calendar all the time. We're trying to get rid. Some places don't even follow the daylight savings time thing. So it's just, when we don't have the math right down, it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be 365 degrees exact. Never. The time is going to be off. Things change. They say the earth is moving further away from the sun. Some people say it moves closer. I don't know. Some people say the moon is moving closer or further. I mean, there's so many different theories, but we really don't know. Things change. Things are always going to change. It's never going to be perfect. Nothing in this world is perfect. Nothing in this universe is perfect. The next tab, let's see. It says the pure one. And then Ra was the head of the first divine dynasty, according to the Egyptian priest Manetho. His hieroglyphic name meant gift of oath, who compiled in the 3rd century BC Egypt's dynastic list. The reign of Ra and his successors, the gods Shu, Geb, Osiris, Seth, and Horus, lasted more than 3 millennia. It was followed by a second divine dynasty that was began by Thoth on another son of Ta. It lasted half as long as the first divine dynasty. Therefore, after a dynasty of demigods, 30 of them reigned over Egypt for 3,650 years. Now, some of that information is right. Some of that information is just what he basically interpreted it. And the reason why I say what I mean by that is that let me see, where's it at? The 3,650 years. That's give or take. I've read so many different dates for that. That's give or take. He picked one that he wanted to use for his narrative, and here, let me read this. Based on substantial evidence, we have concluded in the words of gods and men, the other volumes of the Earth Chronicles, that Ta was none other than Enki, and Ra was Marduk of the Mesopotamian pantheon. Now, that's actually true. I've read that so many times where some people say that, not just from Zachariah Sitchin, academic people. So when it comes to these similarities, you can definitely find similarities, but does that mean that the similarities are 100% accurate? Nobody really knows. It's just they've seen similarities. Let me put it like this. Look at all the people who saturated in this history world. I've been to Cosmic Summit. I've been to a couple of conventions. I've heard people say the same stuff over and over and over again. And I can tell you, and I'll give you an example. I was reading a post on X from Randall Carson where he talks about the Homo sapiens only going back 200,000 years ago. Now, homie, they updated that information. And then the Homo sapiens don't go back just 200,000 years. The oldest Homo sapien bones on planet Earth comes from Morocco, Africa, and they go back 300,000 years ago. Okay, and they did a new peer-reviewed article on the bones that they found in Ethiopia that used to say 200,000 years ago, now goes back to 230 plus thousand years ago. So when you hear somebody say something in 2025, 2024, that, that 200,000 years information is wrong, because they're not going back to update their information. You have to constantly be on your guard on this information. Okay, you can't say something and base your whole entirely argument off that information, because once that information changes, what does that do to your argument? Are you going to change your argument, or are you going to just try to keep people dumbing people down? I'm not saying Randall Carson's trying to dumb people down. I'm just saying you have to always be on top of your game. Take that information that you think you knew and see what it says. If you're going to make an argument and go on podcasts and tell people, yeah, the only Homo sapiens only go back 200,000 years ago. Well, damn, homie, what about the bones in Morocco that go back 300,000 years ago? You know what I'm saying? What about the new peer-reviewed article that upstate the information that you just put out that was incorrect? Yeah, it might have been right at that time, but new information updated. So now you got to go back and change your whole argument because you made a whole argument based off of that 200,000 years, and now you're wrong. But see, there's a lot of pride in this. A lot of people want to be right. A lot of people want to be, yo, I'm the man. I know what I'm talking about. Well, if you the man and you wrong, you wrong. Okay? Be a man enough to know that you wrong. If you can't do that, then what are you doing spreading information? I hate when people do that. Update your information. That's why me personally, if I'm reading something just like they are, they're reading it from somewhere too. If I'm reading it, I'm putting these tabs on it and I'm constantly updating my information. Constantly. That's why these tabs are here, because everything that I've talked about is literally either on my website. I've talked about it on podcast interviews. I wrote about it in my book. I've done everything. And I always say, hey, it's just a piece of the puzzle. You got to continuously update it, right? How many times have you done a puzzle and you was like, you picked up this puzzle. It took you a long time to find where it goes. You couldn't figure it out. You put it down somewhere and picked up another one because you got tired of looking for that spot. Anybody that put puzzle pieces together knows what I'm talking about. Okay. And I showed you the puzzles that I've put together. I have plenty of puzzles around here. I do them all the time with my family. So, well, not all the time. I do them a lot. Well, I'm going to say a lot. I'm doing them enough. Scholars have long debated, but have yet to verify the origin of the week, the slice of the year measured in lengths of 7 days. We have shown in earlier books of the Earth Chronicles that 7 was the number that represented our planet, the Earth. That's wrong. I'm going to talk about that. The Sumerians only knew of 5 planets. Okay. They didn't know 7. They didn't know 8, 9, or 10, 11, or 12, or 13. Okay. They knew of only 5 planets. It wasn't until later on that the information that they had was updated. Okay. So when he says, we have shown in earlier books, who the hell is we? Sitchin, you the one that wrote this book. You the only one in this author of this book. So we don't know shit. You just telling us what you think we know. And I can tell you what I know is the Sumerians only knew of 5 constellations, or what they would consider planets. Let's keep it moving. Okay, so this next one is this next tab is I have to read a lot of it, but I'm not, because I'm not going to read all these pages because the tab is in a certain spot, which means that I have to read the whole thing. But I'll read this one part. It says the discovery near Clovis, near New Mexico, in 1932 of a trove of leaf-shaped, sharp-edged stone points that could be attached to spears and clubs for hunting, and subsequently at North American sites. So let's see, led to the theory that big game hunters migrated from Asia to the Pacific Northwest some 12,000 years ago, when Siberia and Asia were linked by an icy land bridge. In time, the theory held that these Clovis people and their kindred folk spread over North America and via Central America, eventually also to South America. Well, I live right outside of Savannah, about 30 minutes outside. And there's a lot of individuals that will talk about the Clovis people from that side of the world. And I can tell you that you don't need to go through the Bering Strait or all that to get to here. Some people could have definitely traveled through boats, canoes and kayaks, depending on the size, if they know how to navigate the oceans. We were voyagers from Moana is a good example of that. But let's see. This is a question that also, when applied to the age of the Sphinx, has only one answer. The Anunnaki showing man how to cross the oceans, telling him why and where to, perhaps carrying him over on the wings of eagles, as the Bible has described, to a new promised land. Now, this is interesting because this is what trips me out every time about Zachariah Sitchin, anybody that believes in an Anunnaki having flying aircrafts and all this other stuff. Yo, we laugh at Sitchin talking about him, and you ain't lying. But let me tell you why this trips me out. So, according to Zachariah Sitchin and some scholars, those traveled from somewhere from Africa, Egypt, over to Mesoamerica, and he traveled in a boat in the oceans. Now, if the Anunnaki came from planet Nibiru here and flew in aircrafts, where the hell was those aircraft at? Why didn't he get in? Why he get into dangerous waters and sail across the oceans? Come on, man. This is the type of stupid stuff that I hate hearing when people say, when they trying to make logic saying that extraterrestrials came from outside our Earth's atmosphere and they use wooden boats to travel the seas. Why didn't they just use their spaceship? Come on, man. And don't use this excuse that they didn't have fuel, because supposedly the Anunnaki was sending gold back to planet Nibiru via using Mars as like a little rest stop. Come on, man. You want me to believe that? I know only some people use 10% of their brain. I don't just use 10% of my brain. I try to use the whole goddamn noggin. You know what I'm saying? Just think about that for a second. Literally, if you read Zachariah Sitchin's books, if you read to some of these people who understand these individuals come from planet Nibiru, they would tell you that Thoth traveled the seas in a wooden boat, not his spaceship, none of that. Okay, because like I said, he says right here, showing man how to cross the oceans. If I'm going to show somebody how to cross the oceans, I'm going to have the best technology in the world to do that. Because I ain't trying to die. I'm not trying to die in the seas. Come on. But, you know what I'm saying? You got to think outside the box. You got to question what you read. Before you can question what you read, you got to comprehend what you're reading. Some people like to say, I read thousands of books, but how many of them books you comprehended? Next tab. That such instruments had existed in antiquity can be judged from an object that was found in the eastern Mediterranean of the Aegean island Antiquithia at the beginning of this century, sailing through the ancient sea route from the eastern to the western Mediterranean between the islands of Crete and Cythera. Two boats of sponge divers discovered the wreck of an ancient ship, lying on the seas. Let me see if so this is what he's talking about. And most people know what this is right here. Most people know exactly what that is right there. This one right here, figure 141. Most people know what that is. The thing is that nobody knows exactly what it was used for. So coming up with, your theory and hypothesis and idea about it, people still don't have no idea what it is. They think they know, but it's just nobody knows for sure. All right, next tab. All right. Okay, so apparently, if you have this book, I suggest reading all of chapter 11. See. Yeah, because it is basically okay. So I'm just going to read the first paragraph. It says historians believe that exile as a deliberate penal policy was introduced by the Assyrians in the 18th century BC when they carried off kings, groups of elders, and court officials, or even whole populations from their own lands to live out their lives among strangers in far off places. In fact, the forced departure of someone into exile was a form of punishment begun by the gods, and the first exiles were leaders of the Anunnaki themselves. Such forced deportations, first of gods and then of people, have changed the course of history. They also left their mark on the calendar and were linked to the coming of New Age. Let me see. Yeah, so let me see. Let me make sure if I can find something that I could read off that's actually yeah. You know what? I just read something. He says we a lot, and I'm gonna read it. He says, judging by the designs of these structures, Thoth was not invited there to take hand in their construction. But if, as we believe, he was the divine architect of the circular observatories, he was certainly present in the sacred valley. Now, this is interesting to me. This is very interesting. How can I say this? How can I put this? He says we. Who the hell is we? Now, everybody knows I love The Simpsons. There's an episode on The Simpsons where Homer, Lisa, Mo, the professor, and somebody else want to write a book. And it's basically, and this is basically the description of the show. Whoever name is on the book is not actually the person who wrote it. It's somebody else. It's just that person is the fall guy, I guess you can say. And every time I read Sitchin's books or go back and read his books, I get this theory that says we. I'm always wondering who the hell is we? Because when you say we, that means multiple people are involved in this knowledge that you're sharing. Well, why is there only one person on there? Now, have read plenty of times, and this is why I say that I wish Zechariah Sitchin would have took Dr. Michael S. Heiser on him and his argument about Planet Nibiru and challenged him on reading cuneiform, because like I said, I like when people challenge me. That's one of my favorite things. You challenge me, we can go all day, because I'm just going to pull out books on top of books on top of books on top of books and tell you, look, I'm not telling you what's right and wrong. I'm just telling you what I've read personally. And I can tell you you're wrong on certain things based off of what you said you've read, which is not in the book that you said you read it in. That's the only thing that I'm telling you that's wrong. You're saying the book said something, I want to know exactly what page, paragraph, and where you got it from. Because if I have that same book and you have that book, show me where it's at. And if you want to prove you're right, all you got to do is go back and read it. And if you tell me, I'm not going to waste my time to go back and read it, just do your own research. Well, damn it, I already did it. So now I'm asking you where to show me what to do it at. But see, I took it a step further. I created this series on my YouTube channel, what I've learned from reading these books. So you best believe, and when you tell me to go do it, I'm going to say, well, here's my series on that book. Let's see. I refer to myself as we sometimes as well when I'm writing, usually to refer to myself as and include the audience that is reading and listening. You know, that's I can understand why people use certain words for certain things. That's funny to me too. And the reason why is because when you say we, you're saying, see, now you're saying that I know what you know. Well, guess what? I did my due diligence. I read the book that you have. I tabbed it up with my tabs. We don't agree with you, or at least I don't agree with you. And that's why I always tell people, just show me where you got it from. If I can do this, then you can do it. I don't even have the bread to do this stuff like Billy Carson does. You know, he always talking about his millions of dollars. I mean, he had a video one time when he went against Wes Huff about how Wes Huff called him out. He went on a 2-hour tangent about himself, and I remember he deleted it. But he also has another episode that he deleted where his ex-wife, I don't know if it's his ex-wife now, they're getting a divorce, came in and told him to turn off his stream. Literally, you could watch it. I have it recorded because I used to record his stuff just to go back and research what he said. And see, that's part of a lot of people's problems. You might be able to delete what you already did, but you better believe somebody already got that stuff. So you might as well just be man enough to keep it up and just keep it going. If you said something wrong, keep it wrong. I'm telling you, his wife came in, he was talking about music artists, and I think he was probably talking about Donnie Arcade and Cruz, because those are two of his artists that he used to have on this label. And he was just going on talking about, see, I know so many people that have so much music and blah, 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 blah. And his wife came in and said, you need to turn this off. You need to get off right now. He looking at her dumbfounded because he was going in on these people. I don't know if he was talking about Donnie Arcade or Cruz or not, but he was definitely talking about music artists. And his wife told him turn off that stream. You know what I'm saying? So like I said, if you're going to be man enough to present something, be man to keep it up and just say, yo, I was wrong. I messed up. I messed up. That's all you got to do is just say, I messed up. That's it. But my point is that we don't get the right information from people because they want to give it to us. We get the right information when we do our due diligence, when we go over there and sit there and say, hey, look, you know what? I'm telling you, look, I used to think this one way. Somebody brought it to my attention and said I was wrong. I went back, did my due diligence. Matter of fact, you don't even have to do hours of research nowadays. ChatGPT will literally give you sources if you ask it right. If you ask it correctly, like the 200,000. If you don't believe me about the Homo sapien bones going back 300,000 years ago, just ask ChatGPT the oldest Homo sapien bones on this planet, and do they come from Morocco, Africa, and are they dated 300,000 years ago? Then ask it about the Homo sapiens sapiens, the ones that go back 200,000 years ago. Ask it, has that information been updated? And is there new information saying that it's much older than what was previously thought? And I guarantee you it's going to tell you that. And if not, please show me, because I pull up the source and show you that it does. I have the peer-reviewed article. I literally do. So, like I said, you just got to take the time and do the research for yourself. You just can't take somebody's word for it, because a lot of people only want you to. It's like a preacher trying to get the 10% out the crowd. They're gonna tell you everything that they want just so you can pay them. Next tab. Where's it at? And I'm almost done. Let's see. We got about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 more tabs. So here's the next one. Corroborating legends and tales of the gods from other sources. The list by Manetho asserts that the 7 great gods, Ta, Ra, Shu, Geb, Osiris, Seth, and Horus, reigned a total of 12,300 years. Then began a second divine dynasty headed by Thoth. It lasted 1,570 years. It was followed by the 30 demigods who reigned 3,650 years. The chaotic time followed a period of 350 years during which Egypt was disunited and disarray. After that, a person called Men established the first pharaonic dynasty. Scholars hold that this happened around 3100 BC. Now, this is interesting to me. This is really interesting to me. The Sumerian civilization started around 3200 BC, according to Dr. Nili Samit from Bar-Ilan University. I took a class from her, and she literally says that. And in many ways, Zachariah Sitchin believed that, and so many other people believe that the basic date is 3200 BC. Then the next one is the Egyptians at 3100 BC, which I just read. Now, when you're dating something from that far back, it's a give or take thing. It could be anywhere from 3200 BC to 2200 BC to 4200 BC. It doesn't matter. It's just give or take, plus or minus. When I hear somebody say 3200 BC and 3100 BC, they're picking a narrative and picking something to say, well, the Sumerians were first because they were 3200 BC, and then shortly after 3100 BC was the Egyptians. Well, what criteria is needed to be considered a fucking civilization? Writing system. That's what some people say. Well, guess what? The hieroglyphs in Egypt are older than 3200 BC. They go further back. Literally, they go back further. They have pictographs. They have pictures of Ta. Matter of fact, you look at the Egyptian Ta now, he looks like a normal-sized human being. Guess what he was when he was originally thought of? He was a pygmy individual, short person, somebody that would look like a leprechaun. Now, I'm not talking facial features or anything. I'm talking about height size. Ta was a short individual. He wasn't tall, but you look at the Egyptians from the Greeks and so on and so forth in that time frame when they started, intermingling and all that other stuff. He looked like a normal-sized human. And when I say normal-sized human, I'm talking about a size that is, taller than the pygmy. I shouldn't use the word normal. That might be a bad choice of words, but what some people would consider normal, I guess you could say. Next tab. From the very beginning of Egyptian dynastic rule, religion, the greatest celestial compliment to the great gods was to compare them to the bull of heaven. I talked about the bull and ox already, right? It is earthly simple. The sacred bull Apis was venerated at Heliopolis and Memphis. Some of the earliest pictographic inscriptions, so old that Sir Flinders Petrie attributed them to the time of Dynasty Zero, showed this symbol of the sacred bull upon a celestial bow with a priest holding ritual objects in front. And then it gives it 155b. So let me go ahead and go to figure 155b. And this is what he's talking about. Let me see. Right here. Right there. That's where he's talking about, right there. 155b. I remember when I was talking about the ancient Hebrew and the Aleph and all that other stuff. I mean, bulls was a representation of agricultural needs, literally. So, because it was a strong leader. That's why when a younger bull came to being trained to for agricultural needs, they would yoke the more experienced one with the most inexperienced one so they can learn from each other, or the young one can learn from the other one. Next tab. Let's see. Oh, did I skip one? In a night equivalent to 1 February 2031 BC, a major lunar eclipse occurred in Sumer. It was taken to be an ominous omen of the nearing eclipse of the moon and himself. The first victim, however, was Shu Sin, for by the following year he was no longer king. Like I said, go read the book Almagest and by Ptolemy, one of the hardest books that I've ever read. And I will be going over it in the future. I probably won't be able to explain too much because I didn't understand it, but I can tell you what some of the stuff that I did understand. And I can tell you they've always been looking at the sky and they were always sharing information. And this has always have been a thing, not just in Egypt, Mesopotamia, or Mesoamerica. It was all over the world. The next one. The notion that Jupiter in conjunction with the sun might have served as the announcer, the herald of the age of Aries, was also surmised from Babylonian astronomical tablets in a series of papers titled Euphratian Stellar Researches by Robert Brown in the Proceedings of the Society of Biblical Archaeology, London in 1893, focusing in part on two astronomical tablets. Now, this is where he names his cuneiform tablet identifiers for some things. He says British Museum catalog numbers K2310 and K28094. Let's see if I can find that real quick. Let's see if I can find that real quick. Let's see if I can bring this British Museum catalog up. Let's see if we can look at it as together. What was it? Number K dot, let's see, 2310. See if it brings it up. So yeah, here we go. All cookies. So this is the actual tablet that Sitchin talking about. This one right here. Now I want to show you something because this is very important. This is not just and I can show you CDLI too, but this is the tablet that he's talking about, right? So you come over here, museum number, it gives you that series of Ashurbanipal. Then it says let me see if I can make this bigger for you guys. Yeah, here we go. So right here, fragments of of a clay tablet, astrological forecast taken from the observations of various stars. Late Babylonian, excavated by Sir Austin Henry Layard. It was excavated at this location. It's clay, tells you the size of it. And it tells you the inscription types and all that. And it's not on display because a lot of it is not. Let me see something. Let me make this small real quick so I can see something real quick. There we go. This is how their writing system was. And honestly, this is what you can't do. You cannot just look at it and be like, oh, I got what it's saying, right? With this, you have the shadow has to hit it a certain way. You can see like the indentures right here and right there. Of course, you can see it all over. And a lot of these tablets looked like this. They were deteriorated. So just think of this as a book right now, right? You got page 1 through 10, right? Well, you're missing 6, 5, maybe 8, and probably the page number 2, right? And while you're missing those, you have to guess what it's trying to say, right? Not for nothing. like I said, if not Zachariah Sitchin, if Billy Carson could actually read these like he says he can, and that he can translate it, and he's the top fourth guy in the world that can do this stuff, why doesn't he get on stream like I am right now and say, hey, I'm going to teach you guys how to read cuneiform, and I'm going to teach you how it says. And now, like I said, the shadows and all this stuff has to be done a certain way, right? But I'm pretty sure he has a couple of cuneiform tablets in his house. They also make replicas and stuff like that, so he can definitely, do it online on stream to teach people, right? You see something. Let me see. Nope, it doesn't have that. I want to see. I'm trying to see. Sometimes it tells you the date that it was, but I don't see the date on here. Oh, look, and it has bibliographical. So let's click on this real quick. No, let's see. Sometimes it gives you the dates when it was. So it says late Babylonian, right? So let me see. Let me type in late Babylonian time frame just to be sure on what I want to say. This is around 6th century BC. Nebuchadnezzar II comes way after the Sumerians, right? Let me see something. Yep. So yeah, it comes way after the Sumerian civilization, right? So, like I said, when they was looking at their information were given up. Oh, I thought I fought it. Oh no, here we go. Late Babylonian is to be used for all material from Babylonian in the first millennium BC, which cannot be assigned to a specific dynasty. So it's late New Neo-Babylonian. Okay, let's look at the related objects. And see, this is the stuff that you can find like on the British Museum. This is where I go to for some of the stuff. Let me show you CDLI real quick while I got this up. So, oh no, that's not it. There we go. Cuneiform Digital Library of Initiative. This is it right here. Let's go to browse. Let's see what it brings up. See, like I said, it's really hard to find some of this stuff. Because you got to know what you want, what you're looking for. So what I usually do is let's just type in Gilgamesh CDLI. That's what I'll do, right? And this is what you'll find. So this is the Gilgamesh tablet. Oh, you can't see that. Hold up. Let me bring this up. This is the tablet for Gilgamesh, right? Let's see. The earliest Gilgamesh narratives in Akkadian are likewise from the first time. The tablet presented here is one of them. Its storyline runs parallel with tablets 2 and 3 of much later standard Babylonian epic, which is known for more than 100 sources for first millennium BC in Assyria. They give you the time frame of 1900 BC to 1600 BC, right? So these going to this like CDLI, it's really hard, and I don't have time to really. And I'll do a video on it in the future, but it's just really hard to find some of that stuff. I'll give you another example. ETCSL. I was telling y'all about that earlier, right? ETCSL. Oh goodness, there we go. Let's close this out real quick. Bring this one up because I want to show you guys what I mean. So you're going to be given this right here, this website. You come right here to the simple search and you type in Anunnaki, right? And you're not going to get anything. That's what you're going to get. Because when searching for Sumerian names in the translation, remember to replace the special characters, okay, for certain things, right? So we come back here and type in ANUNA, and boom. Anything that I want to know about the Anuna that has the word Anuna in there, I will be able to go right here and read everything. Every single thing. I showed you guys the books in the past. If you've been watching me for a while, you'll be able to see the stuff. But this is all the stuff that you can read for yourself. So like what I like to do is I'm on my PC, so I like to hit Control F, which will bring up a little. You can't see it on my screen because it's on the top part where they're only showing the streaming part. But if you hit Control F, a little box should come up on your screen and say I want to type in creation, right? I type in creation, and that's all the stuff on creation. Let's say I want to type in Inky. This is all the stuff on Inky. It highlights it in yellow for you. You can read everything on Inky that you want on here for yourself. If I want to type in email, same thing. Now, this is the problem that a lot of people have. If I type in An, which is An for Anu, which Sumerian An, you're going to get all the Ans in there, right? Only because it's looking for all the N's. But then you have to go in there and decipher, Ans. The Anu, the head god, I guess, from the Anunnaki, if you want to call them that. You could close this out real quick and you see Inanna's descent to the underworld, and you can read about it right here. After she had crouched down and had her clothes removed, they were carried away. Then she made her sister Ereshkigal rise from her throne, and instead she sat on her throne, the Anuna, the seven judges. Okay, and Sitchin says 12. The seven judges rendered their decision against her. They looked at her. It was looked of death. They spoke to her. It was a speech of anger. They shouted at her. It was a shout of heavy guilt. The afflicted woman was turned into a corpse, and the corpse was hung on a hook. Let's see. Let's go back here and type in Inky. Right? Type in Inky. I hit creation. And I will find 3 things on her that they have on creation about whatever is created. Let's type in humans. Bring up stuff on humans, but this is the thing. You got to know what to put into this simple search right here, because if you don't know what to put in here, you're not going to get anything. Like I said, Anunnaki. I type that in there. I'm not going to find anything on the Anunnaki on there because that's not what the Sumerians called, though. This is the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature. Sumerian is the first language for which we have written evidence, and its literature the earliest known. The Electronic Text Corpus of Sumerian Literature, ETCSL, a project of the University of Oxford, comprises a selection of nearly 400 literary compositions recorded on sources which come from the ancient Mesopotamia and modern Iraq and date to the late 3rd and early 2nd millennium BCE. The corpus contains Sumerian texts in transliteration, English prose, translations, and bibliographical information for each composition. The transliterations and translations can be searched, browsed, and read online using the tools to apply. So let me show you what it means by that. So if you don't know what it means by transliterations, you click on this and you see where it's highlighted right here. I'm going to click on this one right here. You click on it, and this is a transliteration right here. That's why I said it's hard to read it, because this is the transliteration. Oh, shit, you can't see it. Hold up. Let me bring it up. This is the transliteration right here. So when they say transliteration, this is what they're reading. This is the transliteration. And that's why I say you have to learn all this to understand it. You have to understand it. And what I mean by understanding it, let's see. Oh, shoot. Let me click out of this. Let me go back to the beginning. Hold on. I'm going to bring it back up for you guys in a second. Is it? Let's see. Make sure. Okay. So I'm going to go back. There's going to be a couple of clicks on here. So I'm going to go back here. You see where I click glossary at right here? See this right here, glossary? And then I'm gonna show you. Here you go. So this is what you're using right here. So let's say with bird cry A, you click on this, and it's going to bring up this right here. And then you see where it says C2, because that's C2, C.2.1.7. That's where you're going to find it at. That's the Cuneiform Digital Identifier. You click on TR, you see where it's going to bring you the information at. So we'll go back, and then you click on GI, and then I got to bring up another tab because it opens up a different tab. And this is where it says, so it's type of bird, bird cry, daylight to pass. The reason why I brought this up is because when Lil Vibe was talking about the bird and the light and all that, and then it talks about there was furthermore a warrior, his arms was bent, holding a lapis lazuli tablet in his hand, and he was setting down the plan of the house. A holy basket stood in front of me. The holy brick mold was ready, and the faded brick was placed in the mold for me in a fine idol tree standing before the Tigadilu birds were spending the day twittering. Look at that, twittering, yo. Twittering. Twitter X. My master's right side donkey stallion was pawing the ground for me. And it's just, you just see that. So it's like, look, show sign names. You can see this is the right up here. This is the cuneiform. This is how you read it right here. That's the sign name. So when Billy Carson says that he could do that, he has to prove it to me to know it, because I'm not stupid. I'm trying to learn this language, and it's hard because you got to go through each and every one of these. And not only that, these right here can mean many different things. All these can mean different things. Okay, look, you type in here right here. Look, values kabar. Like, you got to learn all this stuff right here. And it takes a lot. So somebody who travels all the time, somebody who's always on the internet and all these podcasts, when do you have time to learn this? You don't. You really don't. So that's my proof on sharing you why I know what I know and where I get the information from. The next tab, the new age had arrived in the heavens and on earth. It was to dominate the next 2 millennia in astronomy that the Chaldeans had transmitted to the Greeks. When in the closing years of the 4th century BC, Alexander came to believe that he was entitled, like Gilgamesh 2,500 years earlier, to immortality because his true father was an Egyptian god, Amon. He went to the god's oracle place in Egypt's western desert to seek confirmation. You tell me what man hasn't thought about immortality? I mean, Constantine ain't the only one. Okay? Gilgamesh ain't the only one. Alexander ain't the only one. Who else is out there? Inky wasn't the only one. All these individuals looked for immortality. It's just what it is. It's human nature. Humans want to live forever. Literally, we want to live forever. Some of us have different reasons why we want to live forever. I want to live forever so I can be there in my kid's life. Right? Marduk's seizure of the supremacy in the heavens was accompanied by a parallel religious change on earth. The other gods, the Anunnaki leaders, even his direct adversaries, were neither punished nor eliminated. Rather, they were declared subordinate to Marduk through the gimmick of asserting that their various attributes and powers were transferred to Marduk. So basically, Marduk became the 50 names of all the gods. That's basically what it was. I talk about the Enuma Elish a lot. That's where you get Marduk as the, if you want to get a full understanding of a creation story and how Earth came to be, how gods came to be, how the Sumerians came to be, humans, and all these other gods, Anunnaki, and so on and so forth. The Enuma Elish is basically it's a full story of what it is. But there's also a catch to that, which I talked about. The next tab is it's under the aftermath section. It's page 353 if you have this book. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's basically saying that no longer residing in Egypt, Marduk Ra became Amen, the unseen one. Egyptian hymns to him nevertheless proclaimed his supremacy, also connoting the new theology that he was now the the God of gods. So basically, like I said, the 50 names of gods. That's what some people call it. That's not. That's just me learning from what wanting to know more about that tab. So if you want to know about Marduk, Marduk was basically he became the head honcho of all the Anunnaki. But this is the thing: the Anunnaki comes from Anu or An, the individual who was supposed to be the first guy. So wouldn't they be the Mardukians or something like Mardukii or something like that? Because anybody that falls on the Marduk, that would basically start another group of individuals because Anunnaki come from Anu. Basically, that's what Sitchin says in his book. So once they became the Marduk, when Marduk became the god, when the people beneath him be like the Mardukians, the same thing with who was it? Jesus, I can't remember. I, I can't remember the guy's name. I can't remember the guy's name. The god that was before, uh, that was in charge of the Anunnaki. He when they was talking about individuals getting kicked out from their places and stuff. Anelu, I can't remember. I have to go look that up. Here's the last. No, that's not the last tab. Oh yeah, it's going to be the last tab because this tab, the next two tabs are where I have to read the whole page. Let's see what I can find that's interesting on it. Let me see. Hold on. Let's see. Nope. Yeah, the next two tabs is basically reading the whole page. So the last tab that I have on here it was such lands that the Sumerian refugees were given asylum all around Mesopotamia, serving at the same time as catalysts for the conversion of the host countries into the modern flourishing states. So basically he's just saying that the Sumerians were known as refugees. I would say this is a good book to read. And the reason why I say it's a good book to read, because when people start talking about Zechariah Sitchin, you have to be informed on what he said and what he exaggerated on. And I would never tell anybody not to read a book. I would always promote a book. Every book that I own, every book that I've read, I highly recommend you reading it, because when there's a time to have a conversation about it, at bare minimum, I know what the text say and what the book says. I just went over all this. I appreciate everybody listening and coming in. Hey, look, if you're watching and you have questions, if you want to know more of what I know of what I just went over, let me know in the comments. I love giving people knowledge. That's why I brought the ETCSL up. That's why I brought up the CDLI, Uniform Digital Library of Initiative, because I want to show people that you don't have to read Zechariah Sitchin to know to get the information. He wasn't the guy, like I said in the beginning. Within the first page, it says one of the most important books on Earth's roots ever written. No, that's not true. Okay, and there's plenty of sources that had this stuff out there way before. Sitchin just wrote books that was interesting because people want to believe in extraterrestrials and things that come outside of Earth's atmosphere. And I'm a believer of extraterrestrials, and I'm a believer in aliens. I'm a believer on there's life outside of Earth's atmosphere. But I don't believe what Sitchin was sharing, and I definitely don't believe what Billy Carson's sharing. The people who believe Billy Carson, they believe him because they believe in extraterrestrials. And I can tell you right now, he's only geared to a certain audience. He doesn't surround himself with people who do their due diligence. What I mean by that is that they research what he said and go back and find the information where he got it from. I want to know exactly where you got your information from so I can read it for myself. I don't want to take your word for it. I will listen, I will understand, and I will accept what you say until I do my due diligence. And once I find out that you created a narrative to make monetary gains, I will correct the false narrative. I don't have a narrative of my own. I don't have a theory of my own. I have many different theories. My theories change upon every time I pick up a new book. But I can tell you that when there's new information provided out there and you keep saying the same stuff over and over again, as this information can't change, you're not doing anybody any service. You're not helping anybody. You're just dumbing down the world. And I feel like a lot of people like Billy Carson is doing that because of the simple fact that he has a chokehold on this Anunnaki stuff right now. And I can tell you from personal experience, when people start talking and I say, hey, look, that's not necessarily true. Here's the facts. Here's the source that you can read for yourself. People will say, who are you? Well, I am a bestseller like Billy Carson. So obviously I'm on the same level as him. And I tell you right now, it didn't take me money to do it. I didn't have to promote myself or do any of that. I went out there and just shared what I've known, where I got it from. And that's what made me a bestseller. Unlike Billy Carson, he took money, he made himself, rich by other means. Matter of fact, in many ways, he has been shown that he had did a lot of fraud in his life. He took advantage of some people, which he's still doing when it comes to knowledge. I'm not here to hit him like that. But to be honest with you, man, I'm just sick and tired of the false narratives. I've literally met him at Cosmic Summit and asked him a question. He told me to go read the Bible, as if I've never read the damn 10 Bibles that I have right here, plus the 1873 version that I have. So when people tell me stuff like that, I immediately lose respect, because when I tell you, hey, look, why is Inky dressed as a fish? Why is he known as a water guy? Does the actual text says he comes from the depths of the sea to give information to humans? And then instead they tell me, well, you just go read it and do your own research. Well, I did my own research. Now it's time for me to Mike Tyson your ass out and knock you out. I appreciate everybody listening to me. I appreciate everything. Look, hey, if you want the knowledge out there, go to my website, rebirthoftheword.com. I have a YouTube channel. Some of y'all are listening on that. I also have a Rumble channel, and I don't play about what I know. My information is out there. It's valid. And if you want to prove me wrong, hey, all you got to do is just show me and give me the information, and I can recant every information that I say. When you tell me that there's a planet Nibiru out there and you prove that it's right, then there's no more argument on my side. Until next time, knowledge is power.